In the bustling depths of the Zelkor Galactic Market, a place teeming with life from every corner of the galaxy, Kaelara moved like a shadow. Her delicate frame, wrapped in a tattered hooded cloak, weaved through the crowd. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small metallic sphere, a relic of her family's royal legacy. It glowed faintly, a beacon of her identity, but also a signal to the bounty hunters hot on her trail. Her eyes darted nervously to the towering holograms that illuminated the market. Among the flashing advertisements and galactic news feeds, her face appeared, clear and unmistakable. The words underneath spelled doom. Fugitive princess. 10 million credits for capture. Alive. Kaelara's heart raced. Her uncle had betrayed her, accusing her of treason and spreading lies to justify his seizure of the throne. The market, though vibrant with commerce and life, felt suffocating. Every step she took felt like it echoed her location to those hunting her. Suddenly, a trio of bounty hunters spotted her from across the plaza. Their reptilian leader hissed, pointing directly at her. Kaelara's instincts screamed for her to run, but her body, weakened by years of captivity and a genetic condition that left her frail, refused to move fast enough. She collided with a merchant's stall, knocking over stacks of strange human tools and gadgets. The owner, a tall, rugged man with a scruffy beard and kind, sharp eyes, caught her before she could hit the ground. "Easy there," he said in a soothing tone, steadying her. Kaelara looked up, her amethyst eyes wide with fear. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. The man's name was Jack Morgan, an ex-soldier turned traitor. He noticed her urgency, the panic in her eyes, and the telltale glow of the relic she tried to hide. Before he could ask questions, the bounty hunters stormed toward them, shoving through the crowd. "There she is," one of them snarled, their weapons gleaming under the neon lights. Jack assessed the situation quickly. He didn't know who she was, but something about her desperation stirred an instinct he thought he buried long ago. Without thinking, he stepped in front of her, placing himself between Kaelara and the advancing hunters. "Move aside, human," the leader hissed, his claws twitching. "She's worth more than you'll see in 10 lifetimes." Jack crossed his arms, his calm demeanor masking the tension building in his muscles. "Funny thing about humans," he said, his voice steady but with an edge. "We hate bullies." The lead hunter growled, raising his weapon. The moment he did, Jack moved. With a swift motion, he grabbed a metal bar from his stall and swung it, striking the weapon from the hunter's grasp. The crowd gasped, scattering in all directions as chaos erupted. Kaelara watched in shock as Jack fought with a precision that hinted at his military past. He disarmed one bounty hunter and used their own weapon to incapacitate another. The leader, however, was no amateur. He lunged at Jack with claws extended, forcing the human to dodge and counterattack. Amid the chaos, Kaelara's instincts took over. She clutched the relic tightly, its glow intensifying. She didn't understand how, but it responded to her fear, emitting a blinding flash that stunned the hunters. Jack seized the opportunity, grabbing her hand. "We're leaving," he said firmly, pulling her into the maze-like alleys of the market. They ran, their footsteps echoing through the narrow corridors. Kaelara struggled to keep up, her breathing labored. Jack noticed and slowed, his protective instincts kicking in. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as distant shouts signaled the hunters were regrouping. I'm Kaelara," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "The rightful heir to the Zelkorian throne." Jack's eyebrows raised in surprise. He didn't know much about alien royalty, but he knew enough to realize he'd just thrown himself into something far bigger than a simple market scuffle. Before he could process it, Kaelara stumbled, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. Jack caught her again, lifting her over his shoulder without a word. "Hold on," he said, determination hardening his features. "I've got a ship nearby. We'll figure this out there." As they disappeared into the shadows, the bounty hunters cursed their failure. but the leader's eyes burned with determination. "We'll find her," he snarled. "And when we do, the human dies first." The part ends with Jack and Kaelara boarding his small, battle-worn spacecraft. As the engines roar to life, Kaelara clutches the relic tightly, her hope mingling with fear. Jack sets a course for the unknown, his mind racing with questions. The audience is left on the edge of their seats, wondering, can this fragile princess survive the dangers ahead? And why did a human risk everything for her? The battered spacecraft groaned as Jack punched in the coordinates for a remote system far from the Zalkorian jurisdiction. Inside, the hum of the engines was the only sound for a moment, save for Kaelara's labored breathing as she slumped into the co-pilot's seat. Her fragile frame seemed out of place against the rugged and well-worn interior of the human ship. Jack glanced at her from the pilot's chair. "You're not in great shape, princess," he muttered, more to himself than to her. He reached over, grabbing a small medkit from a compartment. "Here, drink this." He handed her a metallic flask containing a nutrient solution. "It's not gourmet, but it'll keep you standing." Kaelara hesitated, her hands trembling as she took the flask. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely audible. She took a sip, grimacing at the bitter taste, but forced herself to drink more. Jack leaned back, eyeing her cautiously. "So, you're royalty, huh? Doesn't look like it. No offense." Kaelara stiffened slightly, gripping the flask tighter. "I was royalty. Before my uncle." Her voice faltered, and she looked away, the glow of the control panel casting shadows across her delicate features. Jack nodded, not pressing her further. "Well, whatever trouble you're in, you've got a lot of people willing to kill to get you back." Before Kaelara could respond, the ship jolted violently. An alarm blared, and the cockpit was bathed in red light. Jack cursed under his breath. "They'd got a tracker on us." Kaelara's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" "It means they know exactly where we are, and they're closing in fast." Jack's hands flew across the controls as he activated the ship's countermeasures. The radar screen showed 3 blips rapidly approaching from behind. "Looks like your uncle didn't skimp on hiring the best." Kaelara clutched the edges of her seat as the ship lurched again. "What can we do?" Jack smirked, a glint of confidence flashing in his eyes. "We fight." Her heart sank. "Fight? But your ship is old, falling apart." "Yeah, I know," he interrupted, flipping switches and pressing buttons. "But I've made some modifications." The ship shuddered as a hidden turret deployed from its underbelly. Jack's fingers danced over the controls, and with a press of a button, a barrage of energy bolts erupted from the turret, lighting up the void behind them. Kaelara watched in awe as one of the pursuing ships exploded into a fiery ball of debris. "How did you?" Jack grinned. "Like I said, modifications. Now hold on to something. This is going to get rough." The remaining ships returned fire, their blasts rocking Jack's craft. Sparks flew from the control panel, and warning lights blinked erratically. Kaelara gripped her seat tightly, her knuckles turning pale. "We're not going to make it," she cried. "Not with that attitude." Jack shot back, maneuvering the ship through a field of floating asteroids. The enemy ships followed, their pilots skilled but not prepared for the sheer recklessness of a human at the helm. Kaelara gasped as the ship narrowly avoided a massive asteroid. Jack, unfazed, glanced at her. "Trust me, princess. Humans don't back down that easily." The words struck something deep within her. For so long, she had felt weak and powerless, a victim of her circumstances. But watching Jack fight with such determination sparked a flicker of hope within her. Another blast rocked the ship, and the shields began to fail. Jack grimaced, gripping the controls tightly. "Time for Plan B," he muttered, flipping a switch that activated the ship's hyperdrive. The engines roared, and the stars outside stretched into long streaks of light as the ship leaped into hyperspace. Kaelara let out a shaky breath, her heart still pounding. We escaped." Jack nodded, slumping back in his seat. "For now, but they'll catch up eventually." He turned to her, his expression serious. "If you've got anywhere safe to go, now's the time to tell me." She hesitated, looking down at the glowing relic in her hands. "There's a place, an old research outpost. My family used it for secret projects. It's abandoned now, but it might still have the resources we need." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Resources? For what?" Kaelara met his gaze, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "To fight back." The part ends with Jack setting a course for the research outpost, the weight of Kaelara's determination hanging in the air. The audience is left wondering. What secrets does the outpost hold, and can Kaelara truly rise from the shadow of her past to reclaim her destiny? Jack's ship touched down on a barren moon shrouded in perpetual twilight. Jagged cliffs and dust storms painted the landscape, giving it an eerie, forgotten feel. Kaelara hesitated as she descended the ramp, the weight of her family's legacy pressing on her shoulders. The research outpost stood before them, an angular metallic structure buried halfway into the ground, as if time itself had tried to consume it. "This is the place?" Jack asked, his tone skeptical as he surveyed the dilapidated exterior. Kaelara nodded. "It's more than it seems," she said softly. Her voice carried a tinge of doubt, but also hope. Clutching the glowing relic, she led the way toward the entrance. The door was sealed tight, rusted shut from decades of neglect. Jack stepped forward, inspecting the panel. "Looks like we'll need a bit of human ingenuity." He pulled a multi-tool from his belt and began tinkering. Sparks flew as he bypassed the security lock, muttering under his breath. With a groan, the door slid open, revealing a dark hallway lined with flickering lights. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of decay and machinery long forgotten. Kaelara hesitated at the threshold, her heart pounding. Memories of her family's secret projects filled her mind. Whispers of forbidden experiments, devices meant to reshape the galaxy. "This place gives me the creeps," Jack said, breaking the silence. "But if it's got what you need, let's move quickly. I don't like staying in one place too long." Kaelara led him deeper into the facility, her footsteps hesitant but purposeful. The hallways widened into a massive chamber filled with consoles and towering machines. Strange, luminescent tubes lined the walls, pulsing faintly as if they were alive. "What is all this?" Jack asked, his eyes scanning the room. "It's a genetic enhancement lab," Kaelara explained, her voice trembling. "My ancestors believed that physical strength and intelligence could be perfected. They created this facility to unlock the potential of our kind, but it was abandoned after accidents." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Accidents?" Kaelara avoided his gaze, her fingers brushing against a console. "Some who underwent the process didn't survive. Others changed in ways no one expected." Jack whistled low. "And you think this is a good idea?" Kaelara straightened, a spark of determination in her eyes. "I've spent my life being told I'm weak, that I'll never measure up. If I'm going to reclaim my throne, I can't do it as I am now." Jack studied her for a moment, then shrugged. "Your call, princess. Just don't turn into something that wants to eat me." Kaelara managed a faint smile before activating the console. The relic in her hand glowed brighter, syncing with the system. The machinery whirred to life, lights blinking and holograms appearing around them. A robotic voice echoed through the chamber. "Genetic enhancement protocol activated. Please step into the chamber." Kaelara hesitated, her confidence wavering. Jack placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've made it this far," he said. "If this is what you need to do, then do it. I'll be here." Taking a deep breath, Kaelara stepped into the central pod. The door closed behind her, and the chamber filled with a soft, glowing light. The machines hummed louder, and Kaelara felt a warmth spreading through her body, followed by an intense, searing pain. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to scream. From outside, Jack watched the process, his jaw tightening as he saw her silhouette convulsing. "This doesn't look safe," he muttered, his fingers hovering over the console. But before he could intervene, the light intensified, forcing him to shield his eyes. Inside the pod, Kaelara's mind swirled with visions, memories of her family, her people, and her uncle's betrayal. She saw herself standing before her people, not as the weak princess they pitied, but as a ruler they could believe in. The pain reached its peak, then suddenly stopped. The pod opened with a hiss, and Kaelara stepped out. Her frail frame was gone, replaced by a taller, stronger version of herself. Her amethyst eyes glowed faintly, and an aura of power surrounded her. Jack stared, momentarily speechless. "How do you feel?" he asked. Kaelara flexed her fingers, a small smile playing on her lips. "Stronger. For the first time in my life, I feel whole." Before they could celebrate, an alarm blared. The holograms flickered, displaying a warning. "Unauthorized approach detected. Enemy ships inbound." Jack cursed, grabbing his weapon. "Looks like your uncle's goons didn't waste any time." Kaelara's gaze hardened. "Let them come. I'm not running anymore." The part ends with Kaelara and Jack preparing for the inevitable confrontation, leaving the audience on edge. Will Kaelara's transformation be enough to face the challenges ahead, or has she awakened powers she cannot control? The distant rumble of approaching enemy ships grew louder, reverberating through the walls of the ancient facility. Jack and Kaelara stood in the heart of the research lab, the glow of her newfound strength illuminating the dim chamber. Her transformation was undeniable. Her once frail figure now radiated power and confidence, but the weight of what was coming cast a long shadow over her moment of triumph. "Looks like we're about to have some uninvited guests," Jack muttered, checking his weapon. The energy rifle hummed softly as it powered up. He shot a glance at Kaelara. "How's the new you holding up? You feel ready for this?" Kaelara extended her hand, palm open, as a faint violet energy crackled to life. She stared at it, a mixture of awe and determination in her eyes. "I don't know what I'm fully capable of yet," she admitted, "but I'm not afraid anymore." Jack nodded, impressed by her resolve. "Good. Fear's not our ally right now." The warning sirens intensified, and the facility's holographic interface displayed a map of the surrounding area. A squadron of ships had landed near the entrance, and hostile life forms were advancing quickly. "They found us," Kaelara said, her voice steady but firm. "If we don't stop them here, they'll call for reinforcements." Jack grinned wryly. "Then let's make sure they don't get the chance." Together, they sprinted toward the facility's outer corridor, where the sound of distant footsteps echoed ominously. Kaelara's enhanced senses kicked in. She could feel the vibrations in the walls and hear the hushed voices of the bounty hunters coordinating their attack. For the first time, she didn't feel like a helpless prey. She felt like a hunter. They reached the main entrance, where Jack quickly set up a makeshift barricade using debris from the corridor. He crouched behind it, motioning for Kaelara to do the same. "Here's the plan," he whispered. "I'll take the first few out from a distance. You watch my back, and when they get close—" Kaelara interrupted, standing tall and stepping past the barricade. "No," she said calmly. "Let me handle this." Jack opened his mouth to argue but stopped. Something about the confidence in her tone made him pause. "You sure about this, Princess?" She nodded. "I need to know what I can do." Before Jack could protest further, the first wave of bounty hunters appeared at the far end of the corridor. Their leader, the sane reptilian mercenary from the market, sneered when he saw Kaelara. Well, he hissed, his voice dripping with mockery. "The little princess thinks she can fight." Kaelara stepped forward, unflinching. "You've made a mistake coming here," she said, her voice carrying an authority that even surprised herself. The mercenary laughed, raising his weapon. Brave words for someone who couldn't even run fast enough to escape us before. In an instant, Kaelara raised her hand, and a pulse of violet energy surged from her palm. It struck the weapon, disarming the mercenary and sending him flying into the wall. The other hunters hesitated, glancing at one another in confusion. Jack whistled low, crouching behind the barricade. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Kaelara didn't respond. Her focus was entirely on the remaining hunters. They recovered quickly, drawing their own weapons and firing. The air filled with the crackle of energy blasts, but Kaelara moved with inhuman speed and grace, dodging the shots effortlessly. With a flick of her wrist, she sent another wave of energy crashing into the group, knocking them off their feet. The mercenary leader staggered to his feet, snarling. "You think this changes anything? We'll keep coming. You can't stop us all." Kaelara advanced, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "You've spent your life preying on the weak," she said, her voice low and cold. "Now you'll learn what it's like to face someone who won't back down." The mercenary raised his hands, a mixture of fear and defiance on his face. But before he could react, Kaelara unleashed a controlled burst of energy that immobilized him, leaving him unconscious. The remaining hunters, seeing their leader fall, scrambled to retreat. Kaelara let them go, her instincts telling her they'd spread word of her transformation. That was exactly what she wanted. Jack approached cautiously, his weapon lowered. "That was something else," he said, eyeing the unconscious mercenary. "Looks like you're getting the hang of this." Kaelara turned to him, a small smile on her lips. "It's only the beginning," she said. "But now I know I'm not helpless." As they returned to the central chamber, the weight of what had just happened settled over them. Kaelara had taken her first step toward reclaiming her throne, but the path ahead was still uncertain. The part ends with Kaelara standing at a console, her gaze fixed on a map of the galaxy. "We need to rally the rebels," she said, her voice firm. "If I'm going to face my uncle, I'll need an army." Jack leaned against the wall, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You're starting to sound like a queen." The audience is left on edge, eager to see how Kaelara will use her newfound strength to gather allies and challenge her uncle's reign. Kaelara stood before the console in the dimly lit chamber, her eyes scanning the holographic map of the galaxy. The glow from the display cast an ethereal light on her face, making her look every bit the queen she was destined to become. Jack leaned against the wall nearby, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "So, where do we start?" he asked, breaking the silence. Kaelara's gaze lingered on a small cluster of stars near the edge of the map. "There," she said, pointing to a desolate region. "The Outlands. My family had allies there before my uncle took the throne. If any of them are still loyal, they'll be hiding in that system." Jack raised an eyebrow. "The Outlands. Not exactly a welcoming neighborhood." Kaelara turned to him, her expression resolute. "It's our best chance. I need their support if I'm going to challenge my uncle." Jack sighed, pushing off the wall. "All right, princess. Let's go make some friends." The journey to the Outlands was tense. Jack's ship, though reliable, wasn't built for stealth, and Kaelara's transformation had made her a beacon for anyone sensitive to energy signatures. They traveled through asteroid fields and bypassed hostile checkpoints, always staying one step ahead of the bounty hunters and mercenaries tracking them. As they approached the system, the comm system crackled to life. A gruff voice barked through the speakers. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted space. State your purpose or prepare to be fired upon." Jack glanced at Kaelara. "Guess they're not rolling out the red carpet." Kaelara stepped forward, her voice steady. "This is Kaelara of House Velarin. I seek an audience with Commander Fiddler." There was a long pause. Jack's fingers hovered over the ship's controls, ready to make a quick escape if needed. Finally, the voice returned, softer but still wary. "Stand by." Moments later, a small fleet of ships emerged from the shadows of a nearby moon, surrounding Jack's vessel. "Follow us," the voice commanded. The rebel base was hidden within a massive asteroid, its exterior lined with weaponry and defense systems. Jack guided the ship into a cavernous hangar, where armed soldiers awaited them. As the ramp lowered, Kaelara stepped out, her regal demeanor unwavering despite the tense atmosphere. A tall figure approached, clad in dark armor with a scar running down his face. "Commander Fiddler, a former general loyal to Kaelara's family, regarded her with cautious eyes. "Princess Kaelara," he said, his tone a mix of respect and disbelief. "I thought you were dead." Kaelara inclined her head. "My uncle tried to make sure of that. But I'm here now, and I need your help." Feller crossed his arms. "Help? With what?" "Your uncle has the throne, the fleet, and the galaxy's most ruthless mercenaries. What can you possibly offer that would make us risk everything?" Kaelara held her ground. "I offer hope," she said firmly. "My uncle rules through fear and oppression. The people are suffering. They need a leader who will stand for them, fight for them. I can be that leader." Feller studied her, his expression unreadable. "And why should we believe you? You were sheltered your whole life, hidden away in your palace. How do we know you're strong enough for this fight?" Kaelara stepped closer, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "Because I've already started fighting," she said. She raised her hand, letting the violet energy flicker to life. Gasps rippled through the crowd of soldiers as they stepped back, awed by the display. Feller's eyes narrowed. "The enhancement program. I thought it was a myth." "It's real," Kaelara said. "And it's only a part of what I've become. I've faced your mercenaries. I've faced death. And I'm still standing." Feller was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "You've got fire, I'll give you that. But words and powers aren't enough. If you want our support, you'll need to prove yourself." Kaelara squared her shoulders. "What do you need me to do?" Feller led Kaelara and Jack to the command center, where a holographic display showed a nearby mining colony under siege by mercenaries loyal to her uncle. "That colony supplies us with the materials we need to keep this base running," Feller explained. "If we lose it, we lose everything. Your uncle's forces know that, and they've sent a strike team to take it out." Kaelara nodded, understanding the stakes. "We'll defend the colony." Feller smirked. "We, you, and your human friend." Jack chuckled. "Hey, don't underestimate humans. We're full of surprises." Feller's expression remained skeptical. "Fine. You want to lead us. Then lead. Take a small team and secure the colony. If you succeed, you'll have my support. If you fail—" "We won't fail," Kaelara interrupted, her voice firm. She turned to Jack. "Let's go." The mission to the colony was a grueling test of Kaelara's newfound strength and leadership. She led a small team of rebels into the heart of the conflict, using her abilities to shield her allies and strike down enemies with precision. Jack provided cover fire, his military experience shining through. As the battle raged, Kaelara faced a moment of doubt when a group of civilians became trapped under falling debris. She hesitated, torn between saving them and pursuing the enemy leader. Jack's voice broke through her turmoil. "Kaelara, you've got this. Trust yourself." Summoning every ounce of strength, she lifted the debris with her energy, freeing the civilians and earning their gratitude. The sight of her bravery inspired the rebels, and together they pushed back the mercenaries, securing the colony. The part ends with Kaelara and Jack returning to the rebel base, weary but victorious. Feller greets them with a rare smile. "You've proven yourself, Princess. You have my loyalty, and my army." Kaelara stands taller than ever, her confidence growing. "This is just the beginning," she says. "We'll take back the galaxy, one battle at a time." The audience is left eager to see how Kaelara's growing alliance will challenge her uncle's reign, and whether her strength will be enough to unite a fractured galaxy. Kaelara stood before the rebel leaders, a galaxy map projected in front of her. Bright red marks indicated territories under her uncle's control, and blue dots represented their growing network of allies. The rebellion was gaining strength, but the sheer size of her uncle's fleet loomed as a constant reminder of the uphill battle they faced. "Feller," Kaelara began, addressing the commander who now stood loyally at her side. "We've secured the outlands and gained the resources we need, but it won't be enough. To truly challenge my uncle, we have to take back Velarin Prime." The room fell silent. Velarin Prime, the capital of her home planet, was a fortress, protected by fleets of warships and some of the most advanced planetary defenses in the galaxy. It was an impossible target, or so it seemed. Feller frowned. Velarin Prime is impenetrable. Your uncle's forces will crush us before we even reach the atmosphere. Kaelara's amethyst eyes glimmered with determination. Not if we use the element of surprise. Jack leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her with admiration. Surprise? You've got a plan, don't you? Kaelara nodded. My uncle's arrogance is his weakness. He expects us to strike at the edges of his territory, not at the heart. But he doesn't know what we've uncovered. She gestured toward the relic, which now pulsed faintly on the table. This relic holds the key to an ancient network of teleportation gates. My ancestors built them to move armies across the galaxy instantly. If we can activate one, we can bypass his defenses and land directly in the capital. The room erupted into murmurs. Feller raised a hand, silencing them. If this plan works, we gain an advantage no one could anticipate. But if it fails, we'll lose everything. Kaelara's voice was steady. I'll take that risk. The first step of the plan was to locate the teleportation gate hidden deep within a forgotten sector of the galaxy. Kaelara, Jack, and a small team of rebels boarded a stealth ship, leaving the bulk of their forces to prepare for the final assault. The journey was fraught with danger, pirate ambushes, hazardous nebulae, and an eerie silence that hung over the ancient ruins where the gate was rumored to be. When they arrived, the gate was not what they expected. Towering over the landscape, it was a massive circular structure, its surface etched with alien symbols glowing faintly. Jack whistled, tilting his head back to take it all in. Well, that's not something you see every day. Kaelara approached the gate, the relic in her hands. This is it, she said, her voice almost reverent. This was built by my ancestors. It hasn't been used in centuries, but it still holds power. Feller's voice crackled through the comm system. Do you think you can activate it? Kaelara nodded. I'll need time. Jack, keep an eye on the perimeter. Jack gave her a mock salute. You got it, princess. As Kaelara worked to activate the gate, Jack and the rebels patrolled the area. The tension was palpable. Every shadow felt like a threat, every sound a possible ambush. It wasn't long before their fears became reality. A fleet of enemy ships descended from the skies, their engines roaring like thunder. Jack's comm crackled to life. Kaelara, we've got company. Kaelara glanced back, her hand still working the console at the base of the gate. I just need a few more minutes, she called. Jack fired his weapon at the advancing enemy forces, yelling to the rebels to hold their ground. The battle was chaotic, the rebels outnumbered but fueled by Kaelara's courage and the hope she had inspired. Kaelara, Jack shouted, taking cover behind a crumbling wall. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. The gate began to hum, the symbols glowing brighter. Kaelara focused all her energy on the relic, channeling the strange power she had gained during her transformation. The ground beneath her feet trembled as the gate roared to life, a swirling vortex of light forming in its center. It's ready, she shouted. Everyone, through the gate. Jack signaled the rebels to fall back, covering their retreat as they rushed toward the glowing portal. The enemy forces hesitated, unsure whether to follow. Jack grabbed Kaelara's arm. Come on, we've got to move. As the last rebel disappeared into the gate, Kaelara and Jack leaped through, the portal closing behind them. They landed in the heart of Velarin Prime's capital, the city spread out before them in a sea of lights and towering spires. The rebels regrouped quickly, their presence in the city causing panic among the Imperial forces. Kaelara's voice rang out as she rallied her troops. This is our moment. Fight for our people, for our freedom, and for a galaxy where fear no longer rules. The part ends with the rebels advancing toward the palace, the city erupting into chaos as Kaelara leads the charge. Her uncle's forces scramble to respond, unaware of the strength she now wields. The audience is left on edge, eager to see the final confrontation between Kaelara and her uncle, and whether the rebellion can truly overthrow the tyranny that has gripped the galaxy. The capital city of Velarin Prime was a war zone. Explosions lit up the night sky as Kaelara and her rebel forces fought their way toward the palace. Civilians peered out from their homes, watching in awe and fear as the battle raged through the streets. The shimmering spires that once symbolized the glory of the Velarin monarchy now stood as a reminder of the tyranny that Kaelara sought to dismantle. Jack, breathing heavily, ducked behind a piece of shattered wall and fired at a group of Imperial soldiers. "You know," he said, glancing at Kaelara, who stood tall beside him, "this is officially the craziest thing I have ever been part of." Kaelara didn't respond. Her glowing amethyst eyes were locked on the palace ahead, her mind racing. This was it, the final stand. Everything she had endured, every loss, and every battle had led to this moment. She couldn't falter now. The comm system crackled in her ear. "Princess," Fiddler's voice came through. "The fleet is holding the line in orbit, but we can't last much longer. If you're going to do this, do it now." Kaelara nodded, though Fiddler couldn't see her. "We're moving," she said firmly. She turned to Jack. "Stay close. I'll need your help once we're inside." Jack smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Don't worry, Princess. I've got your back." The gates of the palace were heavily fortified, guarded by towering mechs and rows of Imperial soldiers. Kaelara raised her hand, the violet energy swirling around her fingers. With a powerful blast, she created an opening in the defenses, scattering the soldiers and disabling the mechs. "Go," she shouted, leading the rebels through the breach. Inside the palace, the grandeur of the Velarin dynasty was on full display. Ornate halls, shimmering crystal chandeliers, and walls lined with priceless artifacts. But Kaelara had no time to marvel. Her focus was on the throne room, where her uncle waited. As they approached the grand doors, a squad of elite guards appeared, blocking their path. Kaelara stepped forward, her voice echoing through the hall. "Stand down. You don't have to fight for a tyrant." The guards hesitated, glancing at one another. One of them, a young woman with a scar running down her cheek, lowered her weapon. "We've waited for this day," she said quietly. "We've waited for you." Kaelara's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and gratitude. "Then stand with us," she said. "Help us take back our home." The guards joined the rebels, their defection a powerful symbol of the crumbling support for her uncle's reign. Together, they pushed open the massive doors of the throne room. The throne room was eerily quiet, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. At the far end, Kaelara's uncle, Emperor Malther, sat on the gilded throne. His piercing gaze met hers, and a cruel smile spread across his face. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "The little princess has returned, and she's brought friends." Kaelara stepped forward, her head held high. "Your reign is over, Malther. The people see you for what you are, a coward and a usurper." Malther laughed, rising from the throne. "And you think you're any better? Look at yourself, Kaelara. You're nothing but a child playing at being a hero." Kaelara clenched her fists, the energy around her crackling with intensity. "I may have been weak before," she said, her voice unwavering, "but I found my strength. And it's not just about me. It's about every life you've trampled, every family you've destroyed." Malther's expression darkened. "You dare lecture me?" He raised his hand, and a surge of dark energy erupted from his palm, the force shaking the entire room. Kaelara braced herself, countering the attack with her own energy. The clash was blinding, the room filling with flashes of violet and black. Jack and the rebels stood back, shielding their eyes as the two powers collided. The battle between Kaelara and Malther was fierce. His attacks were relentless, but Kaelara fought with a determination he hadn't anticipated. Every strike she landed was fueled by the memories of her people's suffering, and every time she faltered, she thought of Jack's unwavering support and the rebels who believed in her. "You can't win," Melver snarled, his voice echoing. "You're nothing without that power." Kaelara's voice rang out, clear and strong. "You're wrong. My strength doesn't come from this power. It comes from the people I fight for." With a final, devastating blast, Kaelara overwhelmed Malver's defenses, sending him crashing to the ground. The room fell silent as the Emperor lay motionless, his reign finally brought to an end. Kaelara turned to the rebels, her breath heavy but her spirit unbroken. "It's over," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "The throne is no longer his." The rebels erupted into cheers, their victory echoing through the palace. Jack approached Kaelara, a proud smile on his face. "Not bad, princess," he said. "Not bad at all." Kaelara managed a faint smile, but her eyes were filled with resolve. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We've taken back Velarin Prime, but there's still so much to rebuild." Jack nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "One step at a time. You've already shown the galaxy what true strength looks like."